Yo, what up? So, today, all the people I planned to hang out with couldn't make it. So, I figured I would just try something a little different and tell a brief story. Try to keep it under like 15 minutes if possible, just because this one's easy to just tell by myself anyway. So, I wanted to start this thing just to be able to tell stories and hear other people tell stories and just like come across funny things that have happened in people's lives. And so I'm going to tell this story, but I just want to put it out there that like anything that I say on here or talk about or whatever is never meant to be like, oh, I'm so cool. I did this, I did that. Because I'm not cool. I know it. Everyone who knows me knows it. Even my kids know it. So this is just more to say this is something that I did when I was younger, and maybe it was dumb, and maybe it wasn't. But either way, if you want to hear about it, you can hear about it because I'm gonna tell you. So when I was when I was 18, and I graduated high school, I didn't know what I was gonna do, and I just kept working at the job that I had. And I lived with my parents for a little while, and then they asked me to leave for a reason that I can talk about in a different story. So I moved out and moved in with this friend, and I lived with that guy for probably like 3 months. And there's also some stories from there, but that's not what we're getting at today. After that, I moved to this trailer, a single wide trailer in the outskirts of the Dalles, and I lived there with my buddy for about a month. And it was about as glorious as you can imagine. It was a single wide on someone else's property, and I honestly don't remember how much we paid to live there. It had to have been like less than $300 for both of us. It was super cheap because it was a piece of shit. And so my bedroom at this place was probably like 6 by 6. Like it barely fit a single mattress. And this was in 2003. Yeah, right at the end of 2002, going into 2003. And at that point in time, most of the people I knew finally were starting to get cell phones, but they were the old school push button ones that you could barely text with or do anything with. And honestly, I didn't even text back then. We just mainly used them as landlines, that you could take in your car with you. And at this trailer that we lived in on the outskirts of the Dalles, you didn't even have service out there. It was so far out, and we didn't have the internet. We didn't have a landline. So it was basically out on its own in the country. And there wasn't much to do out there other than smoke weed and drink and hang out with people. And I mean, we didn't do a ton, and I didn't live there for very long. I mean, it was such a it was such a trashy, shitty place to live. I remember we never even did the dishes. I don't even remember ever cooking there. So it was just like a skip from one thing to the next. And the whole reason I moved up there from my other place is because I knew that I was going to take this trip to Italy. As part of graduating high school, my parents did this cool thing where they said, we will buy you a ticket to anywhere you want to go. And as everyone who knows me will attest, for the longest time, I'd always told everybody I was Italian, even though there's no proof, because my grandfather doesn't know who his dad was and died and never told us if he did know because he was a stubborn old son of a gun. And so we don't know, we can't trace it back past my grandpa. And honestly, we don't even know if my last name is Maxwell. So I get to kind of make it up. And I always thought it would be cool to be Italian. I've been obsessed with their culture and their food and fucking Scorsese movies forever. And so I always like to imagine that I was Italian. And we even named all three of our kids have Italian middle names. So where else am I going to go? I got a trip for graduating high school from my parents, free airfare to anywhere in the world. I'm going to go to Italy. And so this little stint at the trailer in the Dalles was just the last little spot that I was going to hang out before I went to Italy for a month. So the plan was to go to Italy and take a backpack and take a bunch of clothes and just walk around for 30 days. And I did have a home base to hang out at, which was in Catania, Sicily. And so this episode's a little different too because I'm actually doing a screen record right now. And so it might be a little bit better on YouTube. I'm going to try to fill in details as much as I can with voice. So if you're listening to it, it makes sense, but it's probably better on YouTube just because you'll be able to see what I'm talking about. But the reason I had a home base, a place to go to, was because my uncle was stationed there and working on some sort of military base in Catania, Sicily. So his house could be kind of like a landing space, landing point, whatever, to branch out and go see the rest of the country from there. So early in January of 2003, my mom came pick me up from that trailer, and she drove me to the airport and dropped me off. And I flew to, I think I flew to Rome first, but then made my way down to the island of Sicily. And so at this point in time, I'm only 18 years old, and cell phones, I don't even think you could get a cell phone to work over there without like buying one and getting a plan and everything. So I went to this country with basically just this book, which is, it says, Let's Go Italy. And it's this huge book that has maps of each of the major cities. And it also has phone numbers, accommodations and food. It tells you, it's basically the internet in a book. Like if you were going to Google, where should I stay? Where should I eat? Whatever. But because I couldn't take a cell phone with me, we didn't have iPhones, I had to bring this book. So then the other thing I brought was this guide right here, which is a translation book from English to Italian. And because I was terrified of getting jumped at some point along the road and getting all my money stolen or whatever, I took the guide and I ripped the guts out of a Nathaniel Hawthorne book and put the translation dictionary inside the sleeve so that if I was like sitting on a train or something reading this book, it would look like to anybody I was reading Nathaniel Hawthorne when really I was like trying to learn Italian. But the thing I just realized as I was getting this ready is that the outside of this cover has English written all over it. So if anybody who saw me reading this would have known that I was foreign anyway. So I don't know. I was 18 and dumb, and I thought that was the right thing to do or whatever. But so I fly into Sicily in January of 2003, and I wrote down in this little book like a bunch of things that happened. And so when I get there, I hang out a little bit with my uncle and some people, and then he helps me get a train pass to travel all across the country. And so it was around 215 euros, I believe, which at that point in time, a euro was about, I think it was 80 cents to the dollar. So basically 80 euros would cost 100 US dollars. So I buy this train ticket for 215 euros and it gives you 15 days of unlimited travel. So you can, I mean, if you wanted to, you could just travel all day long and go anywhere you wanted to, and that would be considered one day. And the dude on the train would mark it off as this was a day of travel. So I had 15 days of travel. And I was supposed to be there for 30 days total. And so I get on the train in Catania, Sicily, which is on the eastern coast of Sicily. And right off the bat, I went the wrong direction. And I went to a place a little ways down the coastline before I figured it out. So I got back off the train and rode north. And when you get to the tip, they take the train onto a ferry and take the ferry across to the mainland, to the boot. And then you can ride the boot up to the top. And so the train followed the coastline, and it's so cool because you just get to look out the window the whole time, and you're right on the coastline of Italy, watching everything pass by. And so I went through Naples, and then I went all the way up to Rome. And when I got to Rome, I was looking through my little book and figured out a place that I was going to stay. And the goal was to stay in hostels the entire time so that it didn't cost as much money, because you could stay in a hostel for like 15 euros, 20 euros. So I get out of the train station in Rome and I walk directly across the street from this central train station in downtown Rome. And I went to this place. I forget what it was called, but I go in there and I booked the room. And so the guy takes me upstairs to the room and he's like, okay, he spoke just a little bit of English, but mostly Italian. So he lets me go. He's like, this is your spot. So I start taking my clothes out and like, setting everything down and whatever. And I decided that I was going to go out and do something, go check out the town. It's like 8:00 at night. And so for whatever reason at that point in time, my girlfriend had given me a bottle of patchouli. And so I was going to wear patchouli because, I don't know, I want to be a stinky hippie. And if you have never smelled patchouli before, you need like a drop for 3 months. Like, it is so pungent and you can smell it from so far away. You barely even have to open the bottle and it's just like all over you. And so for whatever reason, I decided to pour half the bottle on my neck as I'm getting ready to go. And this guy, he brings up the next person to let into the room. And he comes in and he's like, oh man, what's going on in here? And he opens up the window and starts like waving his hands to get the smell out the window because it was so strong with patchouli. And I was so embarrassed. I was like, dude, I got to get out of here. And so I booked it before I could have a conversation with him about why I had put on so much patchouli. And I left and I went to the train station, or this little mart next to the train station. And that was when I discovered that you could buy alcohol. And so I bought alcohol for the first time ever when I was 18. And I bought this 3-pack of Heineken. And they weren't 12-ounce bottles. They were like 9-ounce bottles. They were really weird. So that was pretty cool. And so I hung out there in Rome for a little bit, met some people, and then I kept going north. I went north to Pisa because you got to go see the Leaning Tower of Pisa, right? And let me tell you right now, there's no other reason to go there. You get off the train and you walk a little ways to where the tower is, and then there's like 1,000 tourists standing in a field pretending to hold it up because everybody takes the same fucking picture. And I was there by myself, and I wasn't going to take that picture anyway. And so I saw it, and I ate some pizza, and then I was like, you know what? There's nothing else to do here. So I went to Florence. And when I got to Florence, I checked into another hostel, and I'm going the wrong one. What the? Okay. And so I checked into the hostel in Florence, and that place was a little bit more expensive. It was 20 euros a night. And I remember it having a washer and dryer, which was cool. So I cleaned some of my clothes. And this place had a room. It was just a huge open room with like 20 beds. So 10 bunk beds. And I'd never done that before. That was kind of weird, just sleeping in a room with a bunch of other people that can like hear you breathing and snoring and whatever. and we had to share a bathroom, so that was also kind of weird. But I'd never experienced the hostel lifestyle before, so it was kind of cool to see what that was about. And also, let me say that at that point in time, like I said, there's no cell phone. So the only way for me to get a hold of anybody, which is fucking crazy now thinking about it, I was just in the middle of Italy, 18 years old, by myself. I had uh, I had like 100 euros stuffed into my sock in case I got jumped and beat up or whatever. Like I was seriously worried like something would happen at some point, and uh, there was no way for me to contact anybody. Like there was no one there to save me. I could have called my uncle, but he was hours and hours and hours away, and like I couldn't even write emails to people. If I wanted to write an email or something, I had to go to a cafe, and I vividly remember you had to. I can't remember if it took change or dollars, euros, or if you had to swipe a card, but you had to pay before they would let you get on the internet. And so I specifically went to a cafe one night just to write someone an email because that was the only way to communicate with somebody unless I called them on a payphone. And so I had this prepaid card that I could call back home, and I would call. I think I called my parents a few times, and I'd call my girlfriend mainly and talk to her. But yeah, so I was in Florence and hung out there for a few days, and then I decided to go up to where is it? I went to Venice, and so I got on the train and rode up to Venice, and Venice is insane. It is. It's like a rat maze on an island out in the middle of nowhere. You get there and you're like, holy shit! Everything is on stilts. Like it is just floating out there in the middle. Well, it feels like the middle of nowhere, but it's not. And so I get there, and that hotel room or that overnight lodging was the most expensive because where is it? I paid 31 euros to stay there because I couldn't find a hostel for whatever reason. And so I had to rent an actual hotel room. And the thing about, I think this is the case with European countries. I don't know. I've only been to a few of them. But the thing that I'm trying to relate it to is the way that it's different here in America. In America, you can go to the movies and see some dude get his head blown off, and it's still PG-13. But there's no nipples or nudity or anything. Like Americans are so weird with nudity. They don't want. It's forbidden. It's taboo. You can't have anything to do with that. But violence is okay. When I was in Italy, it was different. I went to my hotel room and I checked in and everything, and I go up to the room and I turn on the TV, and it's like 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and it's just a regular channel on TV, and there's chicks walking around with their tops off, and I was just like, what is going on? And it's different over there. They don't have the same taboo, forbidden shit going on with the naked human body, and so that was kind of crazy to see that. And so I hung out in Venice for a few days, and the second day I was there, I purposely just went out and tried to get lost, and I legit got lost, and I could not find my way back to my room, and I really started to get scared because it was becoming night, and I didn't know what I was going to do, if I was just going to like sleep on the street or something. And it is the most confusing place I've ever been. I was looking at a map and I could not fucking find my way back to my hotel. But eventually I did get there, and then I went on to Verona, which, where's it at? There it is. I went on to Verona, and the reason I went to Verona is because that is the place where the story of Romeo and Juliet. I don't know. I should have researched that more before I started this, but supposedly the balcony that Juliet talked to Romeo from is there. And so I don't think those are real people. I think Shakespeare just made them up, but shit, I should have researched that. Anyway, they have a balcony in Verona that is called the Romeo and Juliet balcony. So I basically went there to see that because I was trying to fill up these days and just do some stuff. And so I stayed there, and I ended up meeting some people at the hostel I stayed at there. And that hostel was €12.50 a night. And so after Verona, I went on to Milan, and I didn't feel like hanging out in Milan for whatever reason. It's kind of like a fashion district. I was like, whatever, I don't care about that. And I had heard stories from other people about this place called Cinque Terre. And it was on the coastline it was on the western coastline of Italy looking towards the water. Okay. And so I decided I was going to go down there. And at this point in time, it was not really unheard of, but it was not as popular as it is now. It's like a serious tourist destination now, but in 2003 it was pretty untouched. And so I rode the train along the coastline. I went to this place called La Spezia, and when I got there, you have to get on a smaller train to make it to Cinque Terre. And so Cinque Terre means 5 cities, I believe, or 5 towns. And it is Rio Maggiore, let me zoom in. Rio Maggiore, Manarola, Cornelia, Vernazza, and Monterosso. And they have this trail that you can walk on that connects all 5 of these little towns. And it's so insane. You're up there walking in these olive orchards and up around various animals, livestock. You're in people's backyards essentially, and it weaves you in and out of all this beautiful countryside. And every time you stop, you could take a picture, and it's like the best picture you ever took. And so I go to La Spezia, and when I'm there, I have to take this little train to get over to Cinque Terre. And when I start to get there, it's already becoming nighttime. And as I found out, as I'm reading my little Let's Go Italy book, there's no hostels in those 5 little towns. They're towns of 500 people. And so I'm freaking out. By the time I get to Manarola, I'm like, where the fuck am I going to stay? It's almost 9 o'clock at night. I don't know what I'm going to do. And when I get off the train in Manarola, there's this like 70-year-old man just standing there. And I don't remember exactly how it went down because he spoke 0 English, and I barely knew any Italian. I knew how to say like pizza and shit, but he's standing there, and I walk up to him, and he somehow tells me that he has a room available in his house. So I walk up this hill with this old man, and he takes me to his personal home, and he lets me sleep in his son's bedroom. And so I didn't know what to think about it. Like, on the surface, he seemed like a really nice old man, but on the other part of my stupid, paranoid 18-year-old brain, I was like, what's gonna happen? Am I gonna get killed in the middle of the night? Dude, I don't know what I'm doing. And it all turned out fine. I stayed at this guy's house in his son's bedroom for 2 nights, and he charged me Angelo Ricci. He charged me €20 a night. He was super cool. I didn't really talk to him at all, obviously. I just slept in the room and left in the morning. But so this area, Cinque Terre, is amazing. And I walked I think it's 3 kilometers, 5 kilometers, something like that. I hiked that trail up and in throughout all 5 of the cities. And because I was so stoked about all of it, and just a young, stupid 18-year-old who didn't know any Italian, I'd be walking on that trail, and every single person I saw, I'd look at him and go, "Buongiorno," because that was pretty much the only thing I knew how to say. And so I'm sure every single person I passed was just like, "Will this guy please stop saying good morning to me?" uh, and so I finished staying there and decided to head back down. The cool thing about this trip, it's lonely when you're traveling by yourself, but you also get to do whatever you want to. And so if I was in a place that was really cool, I'd just hang out longer. If it sucked, I would leave. Like when I was in Pisa, I was like, fuck this place is horrible. And so I left. And if I had been with someone else, they might have wanted to stay. So that was the cool thing about traveling by myself at this point, is that I just did whatever I wanted to do. And so I was done with Cinque Terre and I got back on the train and I rode down to Naples. And I decided I was going to stay in Naples. And let me tell you what, Naples sucks. I don't recommend going there. I went there. Supposedly, I should have looked this up too. Supposedly, the pizza, the actual pizza was created in Naples. I believe that is true. I should double check, but I don't want to stop right now. Anyway, okay, so I stayed in Naples. It sucked, whatever. But also, the Mount Vesuvio is right next to Naples, okay? And so for you friends who don't know about Mount Vesuvio, it erupted in, where is it at? 79 AD. 79 AD. This jammer blew up all over Naples, Pompeii, the surrounding area, blasted all this ash up into the air. And so for anybody who has heard of Pompeii, this entire town was buried under a ridiculous amount of soot and ash and volcanic lava. And so Pompeii is one of those places you should probably go if you go there to Italy to visit. And so I rode the train from Naples to Pompeii, and I went into Pompeii, and it's kind of like a historical site, like a museum. You have to pay to get in, and there's various areas where you have to pay to do stuff. And I was being super cheap. I really only spent money, this entire trip, I really only spent money on where I was staying or what I was eating. I didn't buy souvenirs. I didn't go on the merry-go-round. Like, I didn't do any touristy shit. I just paid for food or if I had to get into a museum. And so I went to Pompeii and I was there and I had this moment where I was walking around looking at all this stuff that had been buried by this volcanic eruption in 79 AD. And they had uncovered it, and they have these casts of the people that were like huddled up in a ball when the lava landed on them. Like, it's surreal. I mean, what would have happened? It's equivalent to if Mount Hood blew up. Portland is fucked, and we would all get buried with all this lava. And so it kind of made me think about that. And when I was there, they have all these intricate stone floors and mosaics, like somebody spent their entire life building this mosaic in somebody's living room, just like where you hung out. And I had this moment where I bent down to take a piece of the mosaic, and then I stopped myself and I was like, what are you doing, dude? You're gonna take a piece of history from this historical site just so you can have a chunk of rock in your room? And so I didn't do it. I stopped myself and was pretty disappointed that that I would even consider doing that. But then that was the end of that, and I got on the train to go back to Sicily to hang out with my uncle. And so I called him up and I said, hey, I'm done up here. I'm going to ride the train. I'll be in Catania, Sicily, around 10 p.m. or whatever. It was like a 6-hour 6, 7, I can't even remember. Maybe it was only 5 hours. It was a stretch. It was a serious train ride from Pompeii down to you had to cross over at Messina, which is the tip of Sicily, and then go down the coastline until you get to Catania. So I call him up and I say, hey, this is what's going on. I'm going to be here this time. Can you come pick me up? He says, no problem. Right on. I'll be there. So I get on this train, okay? And I've been riding the train for 10 or 12 days, whatever at this point. So I feel like I kind of know what I'm doing. I got my little stamps, and I got my little punches and all the places I need it. And so when you get on the train, at least at this point in time, at that location in Italy, you get on and then there's a hallway and then the rooms are on either side. Okay. And you walk down 5 feet and there's a couple rooms one room on your left, one room on your right, walk down 5 more feet or 10 more feet. Same thing. It's just a hallway with the rooms on either side. And so I walk down and I pick a room and I go inside there and there's this younger dude, around my age or maybe a little bit older sitting in there. And so it's just him and I in this room. And so on one side you have the door that leads to the hallway. And then on the other side you have huge windows that just open up to look out to whatever you're going to pass. And so I start talking to this dude, and he speaks very limited English as well. But I find out that his name is Mossimo. And there is a clothing company in the States called Mossimo, which I found out recently is run by a guy. I think his last name's Mossimo, and he is married to Lori Loughlin, who is Aunt Becky on Full House, who just recently was supposed to go to jail for paying hundreds of thousands of dollars to get her kids into colleges and lying for them. So long story short, this guy's name is Mossimo, and I instantly associate that with the clothing brand that I had worn forever. And I was like, oh, this guy's cool. We're going to be friends, whatever. And so we're trying to have this conversation with each other. And it was tough because we're both unable to speak the language that the other person is speaking. And so the train gets going, and they have this guy that comes through and checks the ticket. And I just call him biglietto because that's what he would come in and say, which means ticket. He would say, ticket, please, biglietto. And he comes in and he checks my ticket and he checks Mossimo's ticket, and then he leaves. And then somehow Mossimo, he says something or intimates to me that he's like, hey, you want to get high? And I was like, whoa, okay, dude, sure. And I hadn't smoked weed in at least a month at that point, and I didn't think much about it. I was like, yeah, let's do it, whatever. And so he opens up his bag and he gets out these they look like incense. It's like clay packed really tightly. And I don't know exactly what he called it, hash or something, but I had never seen something like that before. I'd always just smoked weed. And so he busted out, and then he gets out some tobacco and these rolling papers, and he starts chopping up this clay type stuff to put in the tobacco, and he's going to roll us a spliff. And I'm like, all right, well, I guess this is happening. And I'm thinking, this is kind of sketchy. I'm on a train in a foreign country. This shit is illegal. But this guy seems to know what he's doing, so we're probably okay. And honestly, I was thinking about it before I did this. Smoking on the train had to be legal. This is 2003. I don't think it'd been banned yet. So that might have been the reason that he mixed it with the tobacco so that it would just smell like tobacco. I don't know. I don't know what his thought process was, but he was not concerned at all. So it's just him and I in this little cabin, and he's rolling up a spliff. And so there's the huge window to our side, and at the top is kind of like a little flop down window. And so he pops the window down and he lights it up, and he takes a couple hits, and then he passes it to me, and I take a couple hits, give it back to him. He passes it back to me, and I take a hit off this spliff, and then we hear the biglietto knocking on the door, and I lose it. And so I chuck that fucking spliff right out the window, and it goes flying off into the coast somewhere. And the biglietto guy comes in, he's like, oh, I smell something. What are you guys doing in here? You could tell something was going on, and it wasn't cool. And I'm just like, oh God, what's going on? And Mossimo's like, oh no, it's all good, man. It's all good. We're all good. It's okay. And this thing and this guy and the American, whatever, you just go. And so he pushes the biglietto guy out the door and shuts the door. And then he's kind of looking at me like, what the fuck, man? You just threw it out the window? Why? That was my weed, dude. Why'd you throw it out the window? And I was like, sorry, I don't want to get in trouble. Fucking go to jail, like fucking prison, dude. I'm in Italy. And so he gets out his stuff again. He starts cutting up the hash stuff and putting it in the tobacco again. And then this time he pulls out one of those incense, and he lights the incense and he sticks it right in the wall, right above the door. And so the incense is burning in there, and I can't remember what smell it was. Hopefully it wasn't patchouli. But the smoke is starting to fill up the room, and he's like, okay, here we go, round 2. And so he lights it up, he hits it a couple times, and he passes over to me. I hit it, pass it back to him. And at this point, I'm pretty ripped, okay? And he's going strong, and I'm about done. Like, I'm getting really high and super paranoid. And so he passes it to me one more time, and then we hear the fucking biglietto man. He's back again. And so he opens up the door, and I chuck that second spliff out the window, okay? And the guy comes in. He's like, hey, what's going on? What are you doing with this? And he reaches up and he grabs the incense. He's like, what is going on with this? And he takes the incense, and Mossimo's like, no, it's all good. It's all good. We're fine. We're just, he says whatever and pushes him out again. And so then we're in there alone, and he looks at me with the worst look of disgust ever. Like, dude, second time you throw my joint or my spliff out the window. He's like, we're not smoking anymore. And so we sit down in this cab, and we have nothing to talk about, and I'm high as fuck. And I'm sure he was too. And so we just had to sit there and stare out the window. And I'm sure he was mad at me because I threw all this weed out the window. And so we ride down the coastline, right? And we get, we're cruising down there for 4 or 5 hours or whatever it takes. And we get down to the tip of the boot, okay? Down to, it's called Reggio Calabria, okay? And you get to Reggio Calabria, and you have to get back on the ferry to go over to Messina. Messina is at the northeastern tip of Sicily. So you're going from the boot, the Italian boot, across over into Sicily. And what they do, like I think I said earlier, is they drive the train onto a ferry. It's crazy. And what happens is that train is in 2 pieces that is connected. And when you dock in Messina, one half goes along the northern coast and the other half goes south to Catania. And this is what Mossimo is trying to explain to me. And I'm so high and paranoid and thinking he's going to try to jump me, or he's mad at me. He wants me to pay him for the weed or whatever. I would not listen to him. And he's telling me, and he's starting to get heated and animated and stuff. He's like, in Italian, he's like, you're on the wrong train. You're going to go the wrong way. What are you doing? Don't do this. He knew I was trying to go to Catania. And he's like, you're going to go the wrong way. You're on the wrong train. And I wouldn't listen to him because I was worried. I was scared. So the trains, we get on the ferry and we go to Messina, and the train splits, and he goes to the other train. And I'm like, all right, dude, later, whatever. And he's all pissed. And so my half of the train starts cruising along the northern coastline, the opposite direction of where I'm trying to go. And I don't realize it until we get half an hour, 45 minutes, hour along until we get to Cefalu, which for whatever reason I knew was associated with Aleister Crowley, who is he was like a crazy occultist type dude who taught magic with a K. So I somewhere in one of my books, I saw that word Cefalu was associated with him. And when we pulled up in the train next to the station and it said Cefalu, I knew I was in the wrong spot and I started freaking out. So I got off, and this is starting to get late at night. This is like 9 o'clock or whatever. And I'm supposed to be in Catania to meet my uncle at 10 p.m. And so I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know how I'm going to get a hold of him. I don't know what's going on. And so I get off the train and I start heading back the direction I came to Messina. And when I get to Messina, it's so late, there's no more trains running. And so I get off the train and I go walking around the station and I realize that there is nowhere for me to go. And I start freaking out. I'm seeing like all these crazy homeless people chilling around and sleeping on the ground, and I'm like trying to call hostels. Nobody will answer their phone. And I was like, what am I gonna do, dude? I don't know where I'm gonna sleep. I can't ride the train. My uncle's waiting for me in Catania. Like, what the fuck am I gonna do? And so I find this payphone and I scan my little prepaid card and I call him up and I'm like, hey, I blew it. I messed up, man. I went the wrong way. I'm up here in Messina. What do you want me to do? And he's like, don't worry, I'll come and get you. And so he gets in his car and cruises up the coastline, and he comes and picks me up, saves the day, and we go back down to his place and chill. And then, the rest of it, like, not much else happened, but that was kind of the culmination of my trip. Oh, Jesus Christ, 44 minutes? All right, well, I was trying to do a 15er, but that didn't work out. That was my trip to Italy. And next time, hopefully you won't have to listen to me the whole time. We'll get somebody else on here. So, yeah.